OST 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hotter Show.
What is up, everybody? We're on audio here today on episode 367 of The Hotter Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. I have a really fun episode for you here today, as I try to every single week right here on The Hotter Show. We are sitting down with Canadian singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist Sierra Levesque, who is an absolute badass, and she's really the future of rock and roll, if we're going to just tell it like it is. And we dive into her career and how she got started, some influences, the early days of her playing, of some really fun stories about getting into music and playing with an idol of hers. We talk about her education and her badass guitar teacher, who you've definitely heard of. And also we talk a lot about some of her favorite bands, some covers that she's done, as well as her original music, which she's getting ready to do her first official single release. So that's very exciting. And we hear a rather interesting story about the inspiration behind one of her songs that she's going to be releasing soon, and why it is kind of a diss track to somebody who's very popular in the media and music industry right now. And then, of course, we also talk at length about where she thinks rock music is going to go and how it's going to evolve, being someone who is really going to be involved with the future of rock and roll. It's really great to get to hear her perspective, and then a lot of other fun stories thrown in there. Definitely a great time talking with Sierra. And thank you very much, Sierra, for the time. It was a pleasure getting to speak with you. I know you guys are going to love every second of our conversation. Before we jump in, I just want to take a quick second here because something happened last week, and I'm not trying to bring anything down or whatever. This is going to be a wonderful conversation with Sierra, but I just really quickly have to say my piece on this because I am such a fan. Saliva guitarist Wayne Swinney passed away, and it was very sudden. And it's very obviously, anytime anyone passes away suddenly, it's heartbreaking. But being such a big fan of Saliva, it's really hitting me hard because I really loved Wayne's style. He was the one constant with Saliva, even throughout his singer change, and he's very well loved in the music industry. And next week, I'm actually going to be doing as a bit of a tribute, an albums that made me segment here on the show for Saliva's Back Into Your System. I was going to be doing that album anyway, not as soon, but I want to do it as a tribute to him. And if you are listening to this and you are a fan of Saliva, consider going to either their website or their Facebook and donating to the GoFundMe that the current singer of Saliva, Bobby, has set up for Wayne's daughter. Obviously, if the rock community can band together and put a little bit of money aside for her that she can hopefully use one day for school or obviously whatever she chooses to use it for. It's just obviously a horrible situation, but I want to just quickly say my piece on it. As I mentioned, being such a big fan of Saliva and of Wayne's playing. So if you have a moment, consider donating to the GoFundMe, and rest in peace, Wayne Swinney. We appreciate all the music that you shared with us, and your legacy and what you meant to people is never to be understated. Big horns up for Wayne from Saliva. Rest in peace, sir. And what better way to carry on the spirit of rock and roll here on the show than having a fantastic conversation with a badass young musician, Sierra Levesque. We're going to jump into that in just a second, as we're going to take a minute to hear a word from the sponsors of Spreaker, who are helping the Hotter Show grow. Let's check it out. Okay, I'm joined on the show today by Canadian guitarist and singer and multi-instrumentalist Sierra Levesque. Sierra, how's it going?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I am fantastic. I appreciate your patience because Sierra messaged me back in like October and I was getting ready to get married. So the that whole month was just a write-off. But it gave me the opportunity to really kind of dig into some of your music a little more and kind of suck some of your videos and stuff. And I just right off the bat have to say I am a big fan of your playing and your guitar collection and your voice.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And congratulations on your marriage.
Oh, thank you very much, and congratulations for you because you just actually celebrated your 18th birthday like a week
Yes,
or
I
two ago.
did. Thank you. It was
Yeah.
actually just on the 23rd, so a few days ago.
Oh, very good, very good. So obviously the cliche, silly question: Do you feel any older?
Right now, unfortunately, no, but I have been listening to a lot of 18 songs. So I was listening to I'm 18, 18 in Life, a whole bunch of 18 songs over and over.
That Alice Cooper, I'm 18. When I turned 18, I just was cranking that. Now, do you prefer Alice's version or Creed's version?
I really like Alice's version.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
really like, yeah, I like his live performance versions of that song too. He always kind of makes it a little bit more improvisational, but I really like his version.
That's fantastic. Well, and it's fun that you mentioned that because you're someone who definitely, I would say you're an old soul when it comes to music and rock music. Where did that come from for you? Where did this all start with music for you?
For sure, yes. I definitely do believe I'm like a 55-year-old inside of my body sometimes. I think I was born in 1970 and I grew up in the 80s in my mind. So, yeah, my parents, well, specifically my dad, that was his story. He was born in 1970, grew up in the 80s. So, growing up for me, I listened to a lot of his favorite bands like Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy. He was more into Ozzy than Black Sabbath, but then he got into Black Sabbath later, so I listened to a lot of that as well. And so it's always been kind of, I like to say, in my blood, all of that music. And so, yeah, ever since I was little, I can remember actually falling asleep in the car to loud music and specifically 80s. So it's kind of been ingrained in my memory.
So just the loud guitars and all that, it's almost like a lullaby. That's awesome.
For sure. For me, it is.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah, very, very fun to hear that. As far as you mentioned, so now did you kind of go back and get into Black Sabbath more or?
Well, I would say he did a little bit later in his life, so then whenever he did, then that kind of translated onto me as well. But he's first and foremost Ozzy on his own, then Black Sabbath. But yeah, kind of just for me, I've been really getting into a lot of music on my own as I've gotten older. So I found like a lot of bands that I really like Iron Maiden. Ghost is my favorite band ever. So my parents kind of first showed them to me, but I've now taken over and got into them. And Rammstein, oh my goodness, just love them as well. So kind of I've taken the 80s inspiration and veered out from there to find my own favorite bands.
What is it about Ghost that because they're not a band that comes up a lot on my show, but I'm more into like obviously like the singles and stuff, but like I
Mhm.
do also really appreciate some of their earlier work. But then they kind
Yes.
of went the route of more of like not in a bad way, but like, hey, let's write some really I think they won like best song of the decade for uh Square Hammer, if I'm not mistaken, or
Yes.
something.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
really have that vibe of being a very radio friendly, lots of great melodies and hooks. What was it about Ghost that just kind of drew you into them?
Well, it was kind of a funny story of how I got into them because my parents were going to see them on their tour right before COVID. Nothing More was opening for them, and my parents really liked Nothing More, so they were actually just going for them. They didn't even think they would even stay for Ghost, but they ended up seeing it and saying, "Wow, this show's a lot better than we thought. Man, we really have to tell Sierra about this." So my dad actually sent me a message during the concert and said, "Hey, here's the merch booth. Do you want anything?" And I was like, "Oh no, it's fine. I'm okay. Thank you very much." Well, I really feel bad about that now because my whole closet now is Ghost shirts, so I feel bad about it. But after they went to that concert and I didn't go to it, then my dad kind of said, "Hey, I think you'd really like this band." So at first I was a little bit iffy, but for some reason, all of a sudden there was like a magical click. And yeah, what I really like is, like you said, their catchiness of their songs. I also like how not all of them are the same. They have a lot of piano-based songs, then they have electric, acoustic, and everything, yeah, from the early stuff to now. I find I kind of go through phases of what's my favorite, but I really just like the main riffs and just melodies that they have in a lot of their songs.
It's very like I showed my mother who is very much a 70s, late 60s, 80s music fan, and I showed her one of their songs. I can't remember what one it was now, but it's very. She was like, it's very like 80s, 70s. It's like yes, it's metal, but
Yes.
it's like Black Sabbath. metal.
Yeah,
That's the big thing online. Everyone's like, "Oh, they're not metal," and I'm like, "Are
I
you kidding
know.
me? Like, it's
I
super
know.
heavy." Like,
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely something for everyone. I really like it.
absolutely. One, it was cool because I saw that you actually dressed up as one of the nameless ghouls for for Halloween. How fun was that?
Yes, it was fun. I've been trying to really stop myself from being too crazy with the dress up stuff, but last year and especially during COVID, that was my main thing that I love to do. I did a few covers of them. I did a lot from their newest album as well, and I would do half the face paint as Papa, and then I would do the full face, or I would do the modern Nameless Ghouls when they had the silver masks. And yeah, for Halloween, I wanted to be one of the original Nameless Ghouls, so I found the old mask and had the cloak and everything. And actually, the first guitar that I bought myself was actually during COVID, and that was the white Phantom and Hagstrom that the one ghoul used to use, but now unfortunately he switched to Fender. So I was a little bit too
Oh,
late
darn.
in
Yeah.
that, but that's okay. I still love that guitar, so yeah.
It's a very cool guitar, and I'm actually I had Hagstrom back in the day, so I'm a big fan of Hagstrom. How do you still play that guitar, or is it kind of just for
Yes,
show now?
I do still like playing it. I find it's really has a heavy sound compared to my others. Like even just whenever you're just in the normal, like even not even the bridge pickup, like the normal neck pickup, it just has a very like gritty sound. So it's really good for a lot of metal songs. Like I've done some Christmas compilations using it, and I've done like metal versions of Carol of the Bells. So it's kind of like anytime I'm looking for a really heavy, raunchy sound, that's the guitar I go for. So I still like it, but it is nice to say that it's Ghost too.
Yeah, that it has that link back to your
Yes.
favorite band. That's fantastic. I have to mention too. You did a cover of Cerise. I don't know if it was a redo of it, but I think it was like a few weeks ago that I saw it pop up.
Yes.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I saw that you covered, and I was like, okay, I know she's gonna kill it, but I was like, this is like a hauntingly eerie take on it's very you stayed true to the original while still kind of even like the way you were like looking at the camera. I was like, this is like menacing. It was
Yes.
fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, that was kind of my goal. Whenever I sing certain songs, especially by them, I kind of get into character, even though I'm not wearing the makeup. I put myself in the place. So yeah, I really enjoyed learning that. I learned it on piano as well, but the acoustic version was fun because it's not something you hear all the time. People usually do electric versions of it. So I really enjoyed doing that. And yeah, just adding the little touch of, I don't know, just something different of looking at the camera creepily, I thought might intrigue people. So I'm glad that it intrigued you.
Yes, I'm a big fan of like horror and stuff like that. And I was kind of like, okay, I wasn't expecting it. Like I was like, wow, this is, and I think that's cool that you can tap into that. And I think that's a lot of hearing some of your influences and bands that you're a fan of. I'm not surprised to hear that you kind of get into character. Is that
Yes.
something that do you have like when you're getting ready to go perform or do a cover, do you like have any like ritual you do as you're getting into character for a song or?
Yes, especially when it's a cover, because I've kind of started doing a lot more covers on Instagram, especially ones by bands that I know might be possibly looking at it. So whenever I do that, I always want to make sure that I'm really putting myself in the place of the lyrics so that it sounds like I'm connected to them. Even if it's a song about something that I personally can't relate to, my singing teacher and I, a lot of the time, we always look at the lyrics and say, okay, what's a way that you can personally sound like you're in this character's point of view to make it sound more authentic when you're covering it. So I would say a lot of times, especially with covers, I do that. And even with my own songs, just because I've written them at all different times of my life, sometimes I have to go back into that. So I have like different Sierras for each song, like the sassy Sierra, the sad Sierra, the angry Sierra, kind of like that.
I love that so much. The many faces of Sierra.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Well, and I got that too with even just watching some of your covers on Instagram and stuff. Obviously, that's a lot of people that'll be the first time they're introduced to you. I think there was a video of you playing with which I was going to bring up. We'll bring up now with Nancy Wilson.
Yes.
And I want to say that video was I was always seeing people commenting. Like I'll like look on your YouTube and it's like, oh, I saw her playing the Crazy on You intro with Nancy Wilson, and I'm like, oh, like that's like that's got to be pretty awesome being a young, female rocker like yourself to get to play with her. How was that? How was that experience?
It was crazy. That was actually back in May of 2022, so last year. It was at a rock fantasy camp in Los Angeles, so where they have a whole lineup of different rock artists come, and you get to see them and jam with them and ask them some questions each day. And so for this specific rock camp, it was Melissa Etheridge, Orianthi, Nancy Wilson, and then Kathy Valentine of the Go-Go's. But I was very, very excited for Nancy Wilson because prior to that, I had posted a cover of Magic Man on Instagram during COVID, early 2020, and she actually saw that and started following me. So from there, every few posts, she would like it or leave a comment, and I was like, oh my goodness, am I starting to become friends with Nancy Wilson? So it was kind of like a little nice thing to have her support. So when I saw that I might have the chance to perform with her, I thought, you know what? Mom, Dad, Stepmom, please, I would really love to go to this. This would be amazing. So they took me, and yes, that day was the Nancy Wilson day. And with me and another group of musicians, we got to play Crazy on You and Barracuda with her. And upon agreeing on the songs with the whole band, I said to them, you know what? Honestly, I would play any song that you guys want. But I'm begging of you, all I would like to do in my life is to play the Crazy on You intro with Nancy Wilson, please. Like, even if we don't do the whole song, just the intro. If I do that, I'll be happy for my whole life. So they luckily were nice enough to agree to let us do that song as a band. And yeah, so right about as we were going on the stage, I got myself in there and I wanted to be right beside her. I was so excited. And so I said, you know what, Sierra? You can't mess up right now. I looked calm in the video, but honestly, that was probably the scariest moment of my life. Inside, I was like, if I mess up, I'm going to cry and run away. So luckily, that didn't happen. I ended up doing pretty good, and she seemed to like it. So that was pretty much the highlight of my life so far, was playing that on stage with her, and it was just such a great opportunity. And now, luckily, the video was good enough that it was good quality, so people are able to see it, and it really has taken up on social media. It has 1 million views on TikTok, which was surprising. I didn't think it would get such a big response, but clearly people really like it. So it's definitely been a fun experience just to have that memory.
That's so awesome. I mean, just the thought of just, okay, don't mess up those, like the whole as you're, because that's also like, that's a very technical piece to play.
Yes.
Like I'd be worried about messing up even just like the main riff of Barracuda, for God's sakes. Like what was like, you just like, don't mess up. Okay, this. Like that's wild.
Yeah, there was a lot of practicing that went into that. And I think I learned it a year before I went to the camp. And I didn't know I would be playing it with her at that time, but I really just wanted to say that I could play it and sing it. So I had been doing it at my shows leading up to that as practice. And then that time, that was the big deal with her herself. So it went well, and I'm glad that I pulled through and didn't make any mistakes.
That's awesome. And you can, I think it's safe to say, you can tell from the video, she was kind of like, okay, like, all right. Like,
Yeah, she was making some like hand gestures. And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, I see you. All right. Real respect's real. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So let's go back for a minute. So when did you start, like obviously music fan growing up and all that, when did you start to be like, you know what, I want to do this, like I want to start playing music? And what instrument did you start with, or did you start with your singing?
Yeah, so I was actually around the age of 3 when I started singing, just as a little girl, kind of around the house. It was one of the first times my parents can recall. We were in a car driving somewhere, and Innocence by Avril Lavigne came on the radio, and apparently little 3-year-old Sierra knew every word somehow. So my parents were very surprised, and I believe one of my cousins was in the car at the time, and she was like, Sierra, oh my God, as a little girl, and she was even surprised. So yeah, my parents thought, wow, she knows all the lyrics already, and she must have an interest. So around that time, I started auditioning for local musicals, actually. So I was in The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Shrek. I played Annie and Annie. I was in Les Miserables, Mary Poppins. So all of those really helped me get used to singing and being on stage and remembering things. So remembering lyrics, lines, And I did that up until the age of about 11. So I did musicals for a lot of years. That was the main thing that I did starting at the age of 3. And it was kind of around the age of 7 where my parents said, okay, we know you're still going to be doing musicals, but is this what you want to do? Do you want to go into Broadway, or are you more interested in the singing and other things like that? So I decided I didn't really want to be in Broadway. I just enjoyed doing musicals for fun. And then they decided to put me into real singing lessons at the age of 7. So that's when I started learning how to sing for real and also learning how to play piano. So piano was my first other instrument other than singing. And through that, I then kind of wrapped up my musicals at the age of 10. I started learning how to play the drums at the same time, just so I could really get a lot of rhythm, because my parents had been reading online, oh, what's the best instrument for a child to start with? And it said that drums really helps teach rhythm. So then from there I moved on to drums. At the age of 12, I then started the guitar, and 13 started learning bass. So I've been doing all of that ever since. And yeah, so professionally, in a way, I started singing at the age of 7, but for fun at the age of 3. So it was singing, then piano, then drums, then guitar, then bass. And now here I am at 18, and I've been doing it for 10 years, taking all these lessons, and I've had a lot of great teachers along the way from all over the place, even on Zoom and in person. So I've been lucky to have a lot of learning experience, and it's just been a matter of trying to get as good as I can at every instrument and being able to do it all for myself.
That's awesome. I just, when you were telling me the story of you singing Innocency at the age of 3, this image popped into my head of like, little Sierra with Doc Martens on and the leather pants, just singing. And I'm just like, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
it's so fun to have that story.
It definitely is. And now, even for my birthday, I think my dad posted a video of me dancing to the TV where Avril Lavigne was singing Girlfriend. And so it kind of like Avril Lavigne was one of my first influences, especially for singing, and since she's Canadian as well. So yeah, it kind of all started there and has progressively moved on to heavier and heavier music as I've gotten older, but I still have her as one of my early influences for sure.
That's awesome. Well, speaking on influences, you've talked about like a few bands and stuff, but are there any specific musicians and singers and guitar players that you really, really are influenced by and that you really love?
Yes, so the main ones that I always say, especially for my own music, who have influenced me are Avril Lavigne for her singing, her voice and the power and even the quietness that she has in a lot of her songs I've taken and used in a lot of my own music. And then Ann Wilson for vocals is just crazy powerhouse. I always love hearing her sing, all the big ones, Barracuda, Crazy on You. But even their earlier music, like in Dreamboat Annie, I just love the way her voice sounds. So I would say those are the two female singers that I really look up to. And then for guitar, Nancy Wilson, of course, her playing, especially on acoustic, has inspired me for a lot of my own songs. And also, I would say my guitar teacher right now, his name's Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and he has really influenced me a lot for electric guitar in his own music, and just, he's a crazy player. He's one of those players that can do everything, and just, you look at him and you say, wow, how is that even possible? So he's really been a great inspiration to me as well. But I would just say there's kind of probably a bin of like 50 singers, guitar players, piano players who have all gone into a mixer to make what I sound like, because there's a lot of people who I take even the slightest inspiration from, but from all different bands and eras and genres even. I even like Katy Perry a lot. She's not rock, but I really like her. So kind of a big mixing pot of a lot of people who have really inspired me.
How would you feel? I'm assuming you mentioned Ann Wilson, and so I have to ask, how did you enjoy Disturbed's single "Don't Tell Me" with Ann Wilson? Did you hear that song?
I haven't heard it yet, but I have heard about people's reactions to it, so I need to listen to it. Because she is really good friends with David Draymond from Disturbed, so I know that they always post about each other, and I always see it, but I haven't got around to listening to it. Is it good? Is it really good? Awesome.
I didn't know it came, sometimes you're listening to music on a playlist and you don't really pay attention to what's coming on. And it was like, Disturbed, okay, cool. And then all of a sudden, I was like, that's Ann Wilson. And it's just power personified. I was like, that is just, it's
It's
just
definitely
awesome.
really cool. I love both their voices. Their voices are so unique in their own ways
Mhm.
too, so I can imagine how cool it would sound together. So I'll definitely have to listen to that after
Yeah,
this.
literally after this, just stop
Yes,
right now. I'll just pause this and you
I will.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And also I was gonna ask because I mean I'm a big fan of I mean I just call him Bumblefoot, but I'm a big fan of his work with Art of Anarchy and obviously with the tons of other projects he's done. As far as working with him, number one, how long have you been taking lessons with him? And I'd have to imagine working with someone like him, being that he is such a, I mean, yes, obviously badass guitar player, frontman, vocalist, and all that, but also he's very respected in the industry as
Mhm.
a session guy, as a musician. I have to imagine he's probably also maybe giving you some pointers on the business as well. Is that fair to say?
Yes, for sure. So the story with him was whenever I first started taking guitar lessons at the age of 12, I was taking them from a local man here in Pembroke, Ontario, named Pat Hamill. And he was kind of, in every town, there's a lot of kind of bigger bands in each town. It's like you go to a town and, oh, they're the main band. So Pat was the leader of the main band, you could call it, in Pembroke. And so he was a really respected guy in the town. He would always perform everywhere. And unfortunately, in 2020, he was diagnosed with brain cancer. And so I thought, oh no, this is not looking very good. He started, unfortunately, declining, and in 2021, he passed away. So, in the time where he was sick, he couldn't do lessons. He was really kind of not very into music anymore, but he was just fighting and fighting every day. So, I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to find a way to continue learning in a way that won't step on what he's taught me, but will just help improve even more. So I had remembered that I had gone to a clinic in 2019 before COVID in Ottawa, and it was a clinic at a Long and McQuaid music store, and it was Bumblefoot. And the reason why I went was because my parents grew up listening to the Chinese Democracy album, and they really, really loved that album. So I grew up knowing everything about every player on that album. I grew up knowing the history of like DJ Ashba, Buckethead, Bumblefoot. I don't know why, but I just had like a full learning about them ever since I was little. So I was so excited to see Bumblefoot in Ottawa. And at that time, he started following me on Instagram. So, we just kind of had a connection. But whenever Pat got sick and I saw that it was probably not going to work out for much longer, I looked on Bumblefoot's website and it said something about him teaching. So I reached out, I sent him an email, and I kind of explained what was going on. And I asked if he'd be willing to teach me through Zoom. And long story short, we've been taking lessons and working together through Zoom since then. So I've been with him for about 3 years now, ever since Pat got sick and passed away, which has been amazing. So I take lessons with him every week. And on top of that, we also do mixing and producing of my own original music. So I'll send him all my files that I record here at home, and he will produce them with me over Zoom. So not only has he been teaching me guitar, but he's been teaching me producing, and also, as you mentioned, just giving me a lot of great advice about my own music career and helping me plan my shows, my releases, everything like that. He's kind of been my music mentor and a really good friend as well. He's not only a crazy talented musician, but a lot of people might not know that he's actually like a very, very, very good, kind, humble person. So he's very respected, but also deserves that because he's such a great person. So it's been a really great opportunity to work with him. And yeah, I definitely have taken a lot from him, both in learning and in advice.
That's awesome. That's all you hear about him. Like obviously I don't know him, but
Yeah.
like all you hear in the industry, people talking about is just that he's a wonderful guy. So that's awesome. And it's cool to have that relationship with someone who's, not only been there, but
Hmm.
is still there. So
For sure.
that's awesome. You mentioned original music. So let's dive into that. You have tons of originals up on your YouTube. Some of them are live performances of original songs. Some of them are like covers that are not live, but they're like in your bedroom
Yeah.
live. As far as with that, do you have like anything specific that you're getting ready to do, as like you mentioned, you're kind of working with Ron, going back and forth with files and that. Any plans for kind of any official physical releases or anything like that in the
Yes,
future?
for sure. So for the past few years, I've been working on fully recording all of my songs. So I've recorded all the instruments myself here at home: drums, piano, synthesizer, bass, vocals, choirs, everything you can imagine. So my main goal first was to get everything recorded so that I would have it just there in case. And now I have 15 fully recorded and produced, and I'm still working on new ones. I'm in the middle of number 16 and 17 right now. So it's been a long process of just really putting all of them together in a way that I'm proud of. And now my first release will hopefully be coming very soon of my song called Get Off My Stage, which is one that I've posted quite a lot on social media to kind of see the reaction, see what people think. And it's gotten a really good reaction overall and a lot of engagement. So I've decided that that will be the first one that I'm releasing. And I'm hoping that it will be very soon to announce the date, because I do have a lot of great performances coming up as well where I'll be promoting that release. So definitely something that's going to be coming out within, I would say, the coming weeks, a date for sure.
That's fantastic. Definitely Get Off My Stage was one that I saw and was kind of like, oh, like what is this? I would say that's definitely you mentioned the different Sierras. I definitely feel like that's maybe more angry Sierra, if if I may
Yes.
say.
Yeah, that's the sassy, angry Sierra coming out, and it's kind of a funny story every time I talk about that song, and just always makes people laugh. So I thought, you know what? It sticks in their minds, and I always have someone come up to me and say, "Hey, that Get Off My Stage song was great." So you know what? I thought, if I'm going to release anything, this is going to be my first one. I'm just going to take it and use it as a tester to really see what I can do.
So I have to ask, because you mentioned the story. Are you cool to talk about the story of behind that
Yes,
song?
for sure. So I'll say it how I always say it at my performances. So have you ever heard of the person, a rapper or a rock artist, you could call him Machine Gun Kelly?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So Machine Gun Kelly started off as a rapper, and he made a whole career for himself out of dissing others. He was dissing Eminem and all other rappers. But now he's decided to become a rock artist, or so-called rock artist, and diss other rock artists. He's dissed Corey Taylor, a lot of people. And so I thought, you know what? No one has come out, and especially from the rock community, and made any piece of musical work to get him back, and especially no girl. It's kind of a curveball to throw a girl in there as well. So I thought, you know what, here we go. This is my chance on behalf of all the rockers, the real rockers in the music world. I'm going to tell him, get off my stage. And so this song is for Machine Gun Kelly, and every single lyric is about him. But it could also apply to a lot of people. I mean, I've heard people come up to me and say, you know what, I had no idea what it was about, but you know, I really like the message and the angst and the sassiness. So technically you don't have to know exactly who or what it's about, but that's a story behind it. So I always get some laughs whenever I tell the audience about that.
I'll be someone to say it. Thank you for your service. I'm not one who likes the whole like dissing and all that stuff. Like that's not what music should be about. That's not what
No,
our the rock and metal community. That's not what we do. Like we don't.
no,
So for someone to come in and start doing that, it's like someone's got to put him in his
I
place. So
know.
why not you?
And especially an 18-year-old girl. There's a difference between like a 40-year-old guy in a band writing a diss song against him, but then when you see this 18-year-old girl coming out of nowhere, it's like, what? Where did she come from? So that's hopefully the reaction that people have had so far, and hopefully one day when he hears it, because I know he will one day, hopefully that's a reaction he has too.
It's kind of just like, what?
Yeah.
Are you prepared for a response if that does happen?
I am, because I feel like I've been so close to him hearing it. I feel like it might have already happened. I just might not have known about it. His guitar player, Sophie, in his band right now, I sent her the song and she saw my message but didn't answer.
What does she say, right? It's like...
I know, there's been a lot of people who have seen it, and you know what, they're all in his circle, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's heard even one line from it before, but one of these days it's going to happen. And you know, I think he right now, when he talks about his own diss songs, he just laughs about them and says, oh, it's all for the music. So I think he'd probably have the same reaction. I mean, it's just kind of, it's all about fun and games, and hey, you want to diss rock artists? here we are. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the best attitude to have, where it's like, it sometimes you have to say something and just be like, hey man, like get off my
Yep.
stage. But
I know.
also it's like, hey, let's jam
Yep.
it on stage together. Like
I know. That's
know.
exactly, that's the mentality. So I think if I release that one first, I'll get to see kind of what happens, and it will be a great tester for future releases and what not to do, what to do. So that's my plan.
That's awesome. I'm actually very particular to "Live a Lie," which is a song
Oh,
that I really, again, a very different song from "Get Off My Stage." But where does that
yes.
song come from?
Yeah, so I was at a songwriting camp in 2018 in Los Angeles, and one of the exercises was to write a full song in a day. So along with a few of the other students, we put together a piece that sounded similar to this one, but it wasn't really about anything. It just kind of had the same melody. So after this songwriting camp, I decided, you know what? This melody is too good to throw away and not use. So I rewrote this song actually a few months ago. I completely rewrote it, and I made it about how sometimes people are afraid to say what they really feel and afraid to show who they really are. So whether it's about loving someone who you're not supposed to love, or acting a certain way in front of people when you really know that that's not who you are. Sometimes I've even struggled with that at school when I am having a great day and everyone else around me thinks that it's going fine, but really on the inside you're kind of hiding how you truly are feeling. So I thought I'd shape it around that idea. And yeah, so I completely rewrote it and kind of really wanted to focus on that universal feeling that everyone has gone through. So that's what it's about. And I really like that song too. It's definitely a nice, slow one, but the recording that I put together really kind of brings it together. And a lot of people have had a good response to that one as well. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, I think that's why it hit me in such a way, because it's a very, not only is it a really powerful piece, but it's also very emotionally mature, which is like, I'm a big fan of that, but I'm also a big fan of it. Aaron Lewis Mustaine said once, some of the best songs you can write, like they can be perfectly vague, where
Hmm.
like you kind of sort of know, almost like same with Get Off My Stage, right? Like it's
Yeah,
like you can know the story behind the song, but it's like everyone can relate to this in some way,
for
right?
sure.
And
Yeah.
guys, there's a live version of this up on Sierra's YouTube from I think it was from November 5th at the Yukon Art
Yes.
Center. That is fantastic. So I
Thank
highly
you.
recommend going to check that out and everything. I'll have some links down below too, guys. But
Thank you
that's
very
awesome.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about writing and recording music and that, what's kind of your process being a multi-instrumentalist? Like, do you sit down and work at the guitar first, or how do you normally write?
Yeah, so I would say it's changed over the years. When I first started writing, I was 7. So my first few songs that I wrote was when I first started my piano and singing lessons. And so it was based on a melody, and then I would come up with piano chords for it. So my early songs that I hope no one will ever hear are based on the piano and about very strange things that are probably just too strange for a 7-year-old. But that's how I first started. And since then, it's really been a mixture of piano, guitar, and singing. So a few of them I've come up with just a piano riff first, then building on the lyrics, and then all the other instruments in the recording process. The last few that I've written have been starting with the guitar riff. So I always love starting with a good riff, and then I build everything around that main riff that keeps repeating. So that's really where I have started for the past few songs. And then I'll just hear a melody or lyrics, and I'll create on top of that. So one of my most recent songs that I wrote called "Wake Up," I was hearing the singing first. I just heard like "Wake up, wake up, wake up," and so I kind of kept building on that. Then I created a guitar melody around that, and then within the recording process, all the other instruments. So usually, the writing of the piano, drums, bass only comes when it's time to record everything, and it all usually starts with a riff or a melody, either on piano, guitar, or singing.
That's awesome. As far as when you have that, like you just mentioned with Wake Up, you hear something in your head. Do you ever do the fun thing where if you're like walking around somewhere and you're like, oh, I got a lyric, you got to like sing it into your phone or whatever? You do that gimmick a
Yes,
lot?
actually, my voice memos app on my phone has crashed. It no longer I'm not even kidding. It actually doesn't work properly anymore.
Oh no.
Because I have so many recordings that every time I try to search for one or play it, the words don't appear. Like, it comes up so slow, it's honestly crashed. The app has, I think I'm going to have to, like, probably back up everything that's on it and start over because there's so many that I can't even find them easily anymore because it won't search. So yes, I do that a lot, and if you went through my voice memos, you'd probably hear some strange things where I'm literally in bed at 3 a.m. like, me, like, you don't even know what it's supposed to be. Yes. And then I listen and I don't even know what it's supposed to be. I'm like, what was that? What was that? But yeah, so that's usually what I do. And lyrics, if I have any, I'll write them down. But usually I like to record them. Like, even if I'm just saying it, usually I hear the lyrics with the melody right away. So I don't have a large, like, file of all these words that I've written down. It's more the sound of them.
Do you do that a lot with the you wake up at 3 a.m. with a riff and go wicka 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 wicka?
Sometimes, like, it will happen in very random places. I've been like about to go literally in the shower, having to come out of the shower to be able to remember, or else I know I'm gonna forget. Like, I'm gonna 100% forget. So you hear the water in the background on the recording. So yeah, it kind of doesn't let me do anything at all. It doesn't care where I am. It will come into my head and I have to remember, or else it goes away forever. So yeah.
When inspiration hits, it hits. I think it was Dimebag Darrell was famous for his longtime girlfriend tells the story all the time of how Dimebag, she used to call him the she called him like the toilet house poet or something like that, because he'd wake up in the middle of the night randomly and he'd go in the bathroom where he had a full stack and a guitar there at all times, and he would sit there and just write a riff. He wrote, I think he was saying he wrote like the entire Damage Plan record in the bathroom in the middle of the night. So inspiration just always hits. You know what you should do? You should just start walking around with like one of the Zoom H1's little gimmicks there and just pull it out and start recording. Those things are awesome.
That is a good idea. That's probably a better idea than what I'm doing right now because, yeah, my phone's kind of done with all my tiny recordings, so I might have to come up with a better plan.
Just have someone follow you around all the time with a little thing with a boom arm or whatever. It's like,
that would be a good idea.
Are you filming a show now? That's just for riffs and song lyric ideas.
Yep, always there. Just the little microphone hanging above my head.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I love hearing stuff like that, right? Because it's just, everyone over the years, I've learned so many people are so different with how they think of things, where some people it's like, no, I have to be sitting in my room alone and I have to be doing this and I need to hear a riff first. So to hear people who are, like myself back in the day, where it's like sometimes you just have something and you're just staring off into space randomly in the middle of the day while you're supposed to be doing something else. And someone's like, hey, are you there? Hey, like, sorry, I had a riff. Like,
I know. Yeah, it's just you get lost in the thought of it, and then you're never really like present because you're just thinking about it over and over, and then you have to press record, but your phone is crashing. So yeah.
Oh no, that's awesome. I love that so much. Your phone's crashing. It's not working anymore. Gonna have to. Let's all band together and get Sierra a new recording device or something. That's cool. Speaking of recording devices and gear and stuff like that, I have to ask, let's talk some guitars, because you have a lot of badass guitars. My favorite one being, as I am a huge ESP guitars fan, that EC2 that I'm seeing, folks can't see it at home, unfortunately, because it's just an audio, but you have a beautiful Eclipse behind you. What, I know you were telling me before we started recording, but what's the significance of that guitar for you?
That guitar I actually got as a gift for my 14th birthday. It was right at the beginning of COVID. So you know what? I was just like, great, a great toy to be able to work with. So I used that one a lot during my early recording stages as well, when I started doing all of that at the beginning of COVID. And it's really kind of like one of my favorites. I brought it to LA when I went for that rock fantasy camp. So I played that one. I played Barracuda on that one with Nancy as well. So it's kind of like one of my prized. I mean, all of them are my prized little possessions, but this one has some great stories. So yeah, I'm really lucky to have the guitars that I have, and people always say, well, what do you do with all those guitars? And I say, well, I try to use a different one each day. I try to use different ones for different songs, different sounds, different vibes, different colors. So I really do use them a lot. And
different Sierras.
Yep, different Sierras, all different. So no matter how many guitars you have, you always find a way to make sure they're all loved, and that's what I love about them.
Do you have a favorite as far as an electric and an acoustic? That's like the cardinal sin, right?
I know. I get asked this question a lot, and I honestly tell people that it changes every day. So today, if I were to pick my favorite guitars, right now I always still love using my Fender Acoustasonic right here, this one. And
that's an awesome guitar.
Yeah, it's very cool. I was actually gifted it from Fender, and at first I didn't know what to expect. There was a lot of different reviews online, but whenever I use it, every time, it has so many great capabilities. You can change from a clean sound to even a dirty sound, and all with the flip of the pickup switch. So there's, I think, 8 or 12 different guitars within the one guitar, and it's very cool and capable of many different vibes and sounds. So that's one of my favorite acoustics, but it's kind of acoustic electric, so it's a blend. So I guess standard acoustic that's not a blend. My favorite is this carbon fiber one here by Rain Song. It's a full carbon fiber, and it's very good because in the cold Canadian weather, you don't have to worry about it cracking or bending or the neck doing anything weird with different temperatures. Has a great sound too. And then for electric, recently I've been using my, I'm trying to pick between two in my head right now. I'm just going to say that today my favorite electric is my Tony Iommi Epiphone SG, and I love Tony Iommi and Black Sabbath, but the sound is great as well, and it has a larger number of frets, so I'm able to play up a bit higher than my other electrics, which is great. So yeah, today, those are my favorites, but if you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably switch.
Might be different. Yeah, that's you were one of the first people I saw playing that Fender Sonic, which is they're very interesting. It's a very interesting guitar to see, because I didn't expect it to sound as, because it's a acoustic, but it's in a traditional Strat body shape. Does it have a standard Strat neck on it, or is it a little different?
Well, this neck, for some reason, is a Telecaster neck, which is very strange. Oh. I don't know what happened, but it's almost, I call it like my little, my Frankenstein, because when I first got it, I thought it was going to be like Stratocaster body, Stratocaster neck, and then I looked at it, and on the neck it says Telecaster. So it's almost like a irony. It's an ironic guitar.
Hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, if that was supposed to happen or what, but I got to customize it all when I was ordering it online, and I was mostly picking the neck and the body for the color. I know that sounds strange, but I pick a lot of my guitars for color because of, different outfits and different things like that. So I really wanted something brown and black, and that neck just happened to match the body the most out of all the other options. Okay. So I guess maybe I accidentally picked a Telecaster neck. I'm not sure, but it's kind of ironic. Yeah, it's kind of like it's a strange guitar for that, but it really, it has a good sound. It's nice and light, and it always I usually use it for the normal acoustic sound, but like I said, you can switch to a Fender Dirty setting, so it can go from Fender Clean to Fender Dirty in the flip of a switch, and the only thing that you have to watch out with it is it doesn't have a battery, so you have to charge it using a charger wire, and sometimes it can be a little bit faulty, so if you don't charge it for 6 hours every day, it won't play. So there's been situations where I've been out and I plug it into the amp and oops, why is there no sound coming out? Oh, because I didn't charge it for 6 hours. So that's the only thing I have to watch out for with that guitar, because I'm used to the ones with the battery. So I just have to make sure that I always charge it. But other than that, I always have a great time with it. And yeah, it's definitely a cool mix.
I mean, that is really cool that it has that recharging capabilities, because back, I used to work at a music store, and the number one complaint I would always get selling a Fender acoustic or a Yamaha or whatever. It's like, man, it's like the giggy musicians, they'd be like, oh, like these, I go through batteries so quickly sometimes. Like, what can I do to... And I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. So it's cool that they're experimenting with that, for sure.
For sure. It's definitely cool. You just have to remember to plug it in properly, because there's been a few issues where you realize it's not all the way in the outlet and you thought it was charging. So yeah, just got to remember to do that. But that's my only guitar that has that. So it's definitely a cool feature.
That's fantastic. Well, something else that I wanted to obviously make sure we touched on top of you being a fantastic performing musician, you're also the anthem singer for the Ottawa Senators in the 67s. How did that come to be? Because that was very interesting to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, I kind of always like to say at my shows, especially shows around Ottawa, you might recognize me as being the anthem singer, but I want you to know the next time you hear me sing that I'm also a rocker. So please remember that I like doing both, just because it does surprise people. I mean, usually anthem singers are more like classically trained or even more jazz musicians, so kind of like a strange combination of anthem singer and rock musician usually don't go together. But yeah, I first auditioned to sing the anthem for the Senators back when I was 12, and that was after having sang for our local team here in Pembroke since I was 8. So I would go out on the ice. They didn't really have a big production or anything here in Pembroke, just a little microphone and little carpet. So I was singing for a few years there. And yeah, I sent in a video, went in for an audition when I was 12, and they started me off with the smaller farm teams and then the training games, and I finally worked my way up to being on the normal roster of just the regular games. And so I've been doing that ever since. So I sang for my first real game with them, I believe, when I was 13, and for their smaller teams when I was 12. But yeah, so I've been doing that for quite a few years now, and that stemmed out to also singing for the Ottawa Red Blacks, which are the football team here, and they also used to have a soccer team, so I would sing for the soccer team as well. But yeah, it's kind of been now like a regular thing. If anyone ever needs an anthem, they think of me, luckily, so that's nice. I get to sing in Ottawa, Pembroke, at random games here and there. A few months ago, I even sang for a snowmobile contest. It was like a big snowmobile races that apparently a lot of people from the US even came for, so it was a packed event, and they needed an anthem singer, so they asked me. So it's kind of like anytime they need anyone to sing the anthems, especially the American, because not many people sing it here, I'm kind of like the resident person. So yep, that's another thing that I do is sing the anthems, and it definitely helps me with conquering fright of singing in front of people, because it's definitely crazy when you're singing to 20,000. It's like, wow, I'm going to pee my pants, but I can't, so I just need to keep it together. And then also remembering lyrics, because especially in like really sometimes nerve-wracking experiences, you might forget, but I've been lucky enough to practice so much that I haven't forgotten anything, so hopefully that will stay that way. And finally, it just helps with my singing ability, because I have to project a lot of big notes, and if you sing the anthems wrong, a lot of people are going to be upset. So you kind of have to stick to it the same way every time, which helps for preparing for a rock tour one day. If I have to sing the same song every night, well, I'm used to singing the anthems, so kind of gives me that practice.
Definitely would be super nerve wracking having to do that. Like mad respect to you, because
Thank you very much.
I'd be like, okay, if I mess up, even a silly word that like doesn't really ruin anything,
Yeah.
people would just, I'm sure you know. So it's like, that's mad respect. And I also really enjoy how you sing them, because you kind of rock it up a bit, you're not just straight. It's like, let's kind of rock this up a bit. It's like, you can tell by looking at you. It's like, okay, like she's a rocker. You can tell by the way you carry yourself. So that's very awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely fun. And I try to respect it as much as I can, because it's kind of like the most respected song in the country. And, like you said, if you mess up one little thing, everyone's going to be on your back, and it's kind of going to be over. So it's just every time you got to really prepare, practice, and mentally be ready for anything that could happen, because I've had some situations where the microphone's cut out, so you have to be ready for that, because then everyone's looking at you and wondering what's happening, or anything can happen. So you really just have to be in the moment, and it requires a lot of practice, but I'm glad I get to do it. It's very fun.
Speaking on in the world of sports, and that's something I learned pretty recently about you, is that you are also a WWE fan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I am. Yes, I was lucky enough to go to a few matches last month. I went to the big Elimination Chamber matches in Montreal. That was amazing. And then I went to just the normal one, Monday Night Raw in Ottawa. And they got me to help out with a little bit of promo. So I made some cool videos with my Elias shirt. He's one of the wrestlers that plays guitar, so I really like him. And also at one of the Senators hockey games a few months ago, they had Dolph Ziggler, the wrestler, there to promote that event. And funny small world story, I actually know his brother on Instagram, Ryan Nemeth. He's also a wrestler, but in AEW, so in the rival in the rival show. But yeah, so Ryan had been following me and liking my posts. And so when I saw that his brother Dolph was going to be at that hockey game, I messaged him and I said, "Hey, I just see that your brother's going to be here tonight. I'll have to try and say hi to him." And so Ryan actually set it up so that we were both looking for each other all night. So I would be going somewhere and someone was saying to me, "Oh wait, Dolph's looking for you. You have to go find him." So we're like chasing each other around the arena, trying to say hi, and finally we did. And so from there, I kind of got in a little bit more with the WWE group. And yeah, so that's kind of where that started. But they're all very nice people. And you know what? I would love to sing the anthem at a WWE match one day, because they have a lot of anthems sometimes at WrestleMania. So you know what? Maybe one day I'll do that.
Let's just put that out into the world. Let's just
I hope
make it
so.
happen. So have you been like a fan for many years, or is it like a fairly new thing you
Well,
enjoy?
my parents, my dad and stepmom are large fans, and so I've been watching wrestling and like seeing it on TV ever since I was little. Kind of the same as rock music. Wrestling has always been in the house, and my dad even has all the belts and stuff
that's
like
awesome.
that. So he's very, very interested in it. I always have watched, but I've never really gotten into like the characters or the story. But with the past few matches, since I was going to them, I thought, you know what, I should probably learn more about the story. So now I'm a little bit more involved, definitely, in knowing about what's going on and the characters and all the different rivals. So I would say I recently started actually learning about things in it, but wrestling has been in my house ever since I was born. So it's definitely another part of our lives.
Also another very, in its own way, theatrical performances and things of that nature. So that's
Yeah, definitely a lot of acting combined with physical skill. It's really cool to watch too. I think I like it more in person than on TV, because when you're actually there and watching it, it's like, wow, this is like crazy. And on TV it's great too, but in person, just like hearing them hit the ring and all that, it's really cool.
yeah, I'm a big fan of the in person too. I'm a big fan of Chinlock Wrestling out of Kingston, Ontario, actually.
Oh, okay.
And they, again, obviously smaller promotion, but
Yeah.
there's nothing quite like being there and
Yes.
seeing it up close and personal, especially when it's people you know. And
Yeah.
it's like they're like being thrown around. It's like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
It is cool. Yeah, so I definitely enjoyed going to those matches. It was very fun.
That's awesome. Well, as we get ready to wind down here, I wanted to ask you, as someone who is, let's be honest, they're very much the future of rock and roll here. Where do you see rock music going? Because it's kind of in this interesting spot right now where, like I grew up in like the really in the 2000s. So the
Mhm.
kind of like the hard rock new metal era of rock music, where there was a lot of heavier guitars and vocals and stuff. And now this shift has happened where it's very much getting back to, not that old school soul, so to speak, never left, but
Yeah.
a lot of bands are really getting back to those roots. Where do you particularly see rock music going?
I see, well, because of my favorite bands, I might be a bit biased, but I see right now it going towards a lot of kind of back to the catchy things. Because today, people, if you ask them about rock music, sometimes if they haven't listened, all they think of is the screaming. So they'll think of, oh, that's way too heavy. I can't even hear what they're saying. And you're like, no, like the rock music where you can sing along with them. So I think kind of there was a division where people, like the prog rock way, math rock, all that rock started coming up, and maybe kind of normal people who are just used to listening to the radio, that might have been what kind of killed it for them. Because, they think, oh, these 10-minute long guitar solos, like they don't want to hear that. All they want to hear is on the radio, the same riff repeating over and over. So unfortunately, even though I love all the talented musicians in those kinds of genres who play like crazy, like really, really cool sounds, I think for the normal average Joe just walking down the street, the real rock music that's going to stick with him is something that is really based around the melody, the catchiness, even adding maybe a little bit of synthesizer, piano in there, just so that they can have that main focus on the sound rather than on all the instrumentation. Because I think that's what kind of made a division between rock and pop, was the fact that kind of rock more went in the way of becoming difficult, becoming a little bit harder to play. Pop went in the way of a little bit too catchy, a little bit too easy to play. So if we can somehow combine those, I think that is where it's going. I mean, Måneskin right now, they're very popular, and their songs are quite simple, catchy, but it's also nice and heavy in most places. I mean, they have great music for that. And like I said, Rammstein, even though it's in German and you can't understand it if you're English, songs like that where it's heavily based around keyboard and just the same repeating riffs and ideas, I think is what will cause the general public to like music like that once again, because everyone always says, oh, rock is dead, rock is for old people. I think the only way to really make it for the younger generation again is to bring it more similar to what they've been listening to on the radio for so often, but still not to be like as dumbed down, but something like that. That's kind of where I see it going. I mean, I'm trying to do that with my own music, keep it catchy, simple, not too crazy. I always try to keep my guitar solos like 15 seconds at most, which I know is sad because, we all love our big November Rain solos and we wish that would be like forever, but sometimes it's just the average person, I guess, might not want to hear that. So I think that's where it might be going, and you never know, but that's where I like.
You said a lot of just brilliant points there, and that's awesome to hear. I think a lot of the, the quote unquote average Joe, they want dirty guitar riffs and courses they can hum and sing along to.
Yeah.
That's, at the end of the day, that's, and to get a lot of the younger generations into even just guitar-based music again is so important, because it was really starting to die off, and now we're seeing this resurgence with a lot of people. Like I'm a huge Post Malone fan. I think what he's doing right now is just brilliant. I know that you did a cover of Take What You Want From Me, so I'm like, that was really cool. You did a brilliant job doing Ozzy in your own way.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Collaborations too, I forgot to say that. I think a lot of things that will help people get back into it is stuff like that. So if big rappers who everyone's listening to, like Post Malone, are bringing in Ozzy, then all these young kids are going to say, wait, who the heck is this old guy? And then they go back and listen to his 80s music and realize, hey, where did this come from? And that's kind of their rabbit hole. But I think like a lot of cool collaborations could happen and are happening that might help other people get into it as well.
Yes, when that Post Malone and Ozzy crossover happened, that was 2-3 years ago now, I think.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been that long.
I know.
I can remember when it happened, because at the time where I was working, there was a lot of younger people around who they didn't know who Ozzy Osbourne was, or they didn't have that education, right? And a lot of people, especially my generation, is really bad for it with, how do you not know who this person is? It's like, that education, if it's not there, they're not going to learn, right? Like if you didn't have the education you did, you'd go off of what's on the radio, and what's on the radio, not
That's
Ozzy
true.
all the time, depending on what you're listening to.
Yeah.
So to then be like you said, you hit the nail on the head, like, well, who's this Ozzy guy? It's like years ago when Kanye West had Paul McCartney on a song, and everyone's like, oh, this Paul McCartney guy's about to blow up, which was as funny as that is, because it's like they just don't know who he is, like respectfully. It's really cool, and I think that's something that we're gonna keep seeing. And I have to ask, because are you a fan of Demi Lovato at all, by chance?
I've seen her. I'm pretty sure I've seen her once, but I feel like I might have seen her twice. I went to go see her concerts before COVID. I really, really loved her music, and I still do, but I think the rock changing of the songs might, like right now, it might almost be a little bit cliche. I'm not sure, because I find there's a difference between like original rock and then trying to be rock after seeing that it's already popular. So I'm not too sure right now of where she's going with it. I do like the versions because I already liked her songs before they were so-called rockified, because I've heard both now. I really like what she's doing. I like that she's bringing more respect to rock, especially with Nita Strauss on guitar. Like, I really like that because people are able to learn more about the sound and people. I'm just not sure yet if it's like kind of more of a trend right now, or if it's actually 100% of what she's doing. So I guess time will tell. I think she's going to be having new music soon, even though she just released her last album not long ago. I'm pretty sure she was recording still. But yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of now people are seeing that it's becoming more trendy. So they're kind of trying to hop on it like, oh, I'm a rock star now and I'm going to do all this stuff to make it look like I'm crazy. but maybe that's not like I'm not sure.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I really like her music. I love Demi Lovato's voice, very talented, but I'm just not sure which category yet
Right. I
she
gotcha.
lands in. I'm not sure. So I guess time will tell, but I just hope that rock doesn't become like this trend where it's kind of too cliche, because it seems like maybe that might be what's happening in some cases.
Yeah. I feel what you're saying. It's like, it's almost like it's cool to, let's just add some loud guitars.
Yeah.
There was I can't remember the name of the artist, but he put out a song that he called a metal song recently. He's a rapper. And I wish I could remember the name, because it was like, what is like, he just added really loud guitars to the
Oh,
mix
okay. Yeah.
and like yelled over it.
Oh.
And he was like, this is metal. And I was like, that's dangerous, because
Yeah.
people were like, yo, this is heavy. I like this. And I was like, okay, that's cool.
Mhm.
But that's not like, I said to my wife, like, talking about Demi, like I did enjoy that record that she did.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm really interested to see what like her next record is like.
Yes.
And the record after that. Is she going to stick with it and get even more, maybe? Let's see really what's going to happen. I think
Yeah.
we're at a really interesting point in music right now, where even people like yourself coming up, like you guys are going to be really kind of the deciding factors in what's
For
going to
sure.
happen, because a lot of the old guard, so to speak, even bands from my generation, like they're getting ready to retire. They're getting ready to,
I know.
Godsmack just released their last record. Like those bands aren't going to be around forever. So it's up to people like yourself to carry the torch. And I mean, I feel like rock music's in good hands with you. So
Thank you.
I'm very, I'm not even going to say hopeful. I'm confident that
Thank you very much.
it's going to be great. As far as
Thank
for
you.
you personally, it's my pleasure. As far as for you personally, what's kind of the next big goal for you? What's next for Sierra?
Well, the next big goal, as I mentioned, is to release my first song. So I'm really hoping to get that on the rounds. And like I said, really just see how that goes. So everyone listening, please stay tuned. Get Off My Stage, date coming soon. And if you're not following me on social media, I'm Sierra Levesque Music everywhere, and you'll be able to see any updates on all my social media accounts. But other than that, I have some very exciting things coming up in April. So I'll be going to Los Angeles to attend NAMM for the first time. I'm very excited for that. I've never been to the NAMM show, so that's going to be fun. And also while I'm down there, I'll be opening on April 14th for Faster Pussycat and April 15th for LA Guns. So 2 very big shows for 80s bands I grew up listening to. And actually on the 15th, I'm supposed to be hopefully playing Ballad of Jane with LA Guns. So I'm very excited for that, one of their biggest songs. So it's going to be a great few shows. And again, please stay tuned, because I'll be posting a lot of footage from those. And it's definitely going to be a great opportunity to, again, follow my 80s soul and go to the Whiskey A Go-Go for these. It's going to be a great, legendary venue and just hopefully an amazing time.
That's awesome. And folks, I'll have a link to Sierra's link tree down below, which you can find all the websites and social media and stuff on there. And Sierra, I always have a staple question I end off with here on the show, and I'm excited to hear, as because of how many shows you've done. Give me either your best show story as far as your favorite show you've ever played, or give me just almost comical, the worst show you ever played. Something went wrong that was just like almost like a groan moment. Do you have a story for each of those for me?
Okay, let me think. So best show I've ever played, I would say my favorite one I've ever played so far, was actually back in November when I was able to travel up to the Yukon. So Yukon, for anyone who might not know, it's right beside Alaska. It's kind of one of the territories of Canada that not everyone knows about. So it's very cold, and I was very excited. And I was able to open for Russ Dwarf of the Killer Dwarfs, an amazing Canadian band who I love, and a few other amazing artists. So that was a great show, just a really good place to use my backing tracks that I've created for my own original music. So that went over very well. I would say that was my favorite show so far in the past year. And for a strange show memory, I'm trying to think. There have been some strange ones. There have. I play at a lot of random things. Like I've played on the back of trucks before. I've played in the weirdest places you could imagine where no one would ever want music, like in a library. I've played in a library,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you can imagine I was young at the time, but still I had people coming up and complaining about the noise. And I would say one of the funniest ones that was more recent was I was playing at a retirement home, and that can go one way or the other, especially when you're a rock artist like me. So I really tried to tone it down. I was playing Elvis, Beatles, a whole bunch of music for the older people who live there. And unfortunately, it didn't go over so well that I had older people moving past me with their hands over their ears and looking very angry.
Oh
So
no.
one day I go from playing in these large venues where everyone's happy and rocking out, and the next day to these retirement homes where people are very, very angry at me and holding their ears. So, you know what? I would say
Oh
that's
no.
kind of a fail. Luckily, I wasn't live streaming that one, so no one on Instagram had to watch that reaction. But yeah, sometimes it's just you play at places where it could go good, could go bad, and this was one of the times where it didn't go as well. But you know what? Another retirement home the next day actually loved me. So it's kind of hit and miss. But yeah, I would say that was one of the worst ones in the past year where you just feel defeated and sad. But that's okay.
It's how to rally from that, right? Because like you
Yeah.
said, you go from that and then it's like, oh, I got to go do this again somewhere else. And then
Yeah.
it's awesome, right?
I know.
You never
It's
know what's
always
going
a
to happen.
surprise. The shows that you think are going to be bad actually end up turning out to be amazing. And then the ones that are supposed to be amazing sometimes turn out to be bad. So it's kind of hit and miss. But you know what? I take every show opportunity that I can get, no matter where it is, how long it's for, if I'm getting paid or not. So I always just do it for the experience, and it just helps me become a better artist.
That's awesome. Putting in work, a workhorse. I love
Yes,
it.
I
I love
try.
it. That's it. Well, Sierra, thank you so much for the time. It's been a pleasure getting to chat with you and learn about your journey and everything. And again, folks, I'll have a link down below to Sierra's link tree. Keep an eye. There's some awesome stuff coming, and we'll have to once you get to an official release, I'd love to have you back on to talk about it when the time
For
comes.
sure. Thank you very much. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And again, please be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with all the updates. Thank you.
All right, folks, there you have it. My chat with Sierra Levesque. That was a lot of fun getting to chat with her, and definitely keep an eye out for everything going on with Sierra. Like I said, I'll have a link down below in the description of this podcast to her link tree to ensure you guys can follow her and keep an eye, because she is definitely going to be coming out of the gate swinging with the single "Get Off My Stage," and also with all of her other stuff. Like I said, I'm a really big fan of her song "Live a Lie." I think it's absolutely fantastic, and great things coming from Sierra for sure. Whatever Sierra you're going to get when you go see her on stage, of course. The many faces of Sierra. So thank you very much, Sierra, for coming on the show. And thank you guys for listening. It seriously means the world. If you are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button. Here on The Horror Show, we like to have fun and have great conversations with people from all walks of life. Obviously, I have a lot of music-related content and kind of creative people content, whether it's other podcasters or voice actors or things like that. But I do have a lot of music content. So if you're into rock music and metal music, I have definitely got something for you back in the archives of The Harder Show. And if you would like to follow me on social media, you can do so. We are under The Harder Show at Facebook and Instagram. I do also have Twitter, but I barely use it. If you are a fan of using Discord, consider joining The Harder Show Discord. We have a ton of fun over there. I actually just had an event last night I like to call Harder's Holding Court, which essentially I'm gonna crack a few alcoholic beverages and hang out with my Discord peeps. So we have a lot of fun doing that, and things always just go off the rails in the best way when you're just hanging out with friends. And also, if you're listening to this and thinking, man, this DJ guy's all right, I want to support him in a bigger way, consider becoming a patron of The Harder Show. Patreon.com/The Harder Show for as little as $1 USD a month, which is that's $1. You're not even going to notice that leaving your account, but it helps me a lot. That is literally, I used to say like a few years ago, oh, that's like a coffee, but that's not even a coffee anymore. that's like $5 for coffee in some places. So $1 a month, or we have a $5 tier and a $10 tier as well. $5 a month will get you access to my exclusive Patreon podcast, which is a horror narration podcast. So if you're into the creepy side of things and storytelling and spooky stuff, consider joining the Patreon to get access to that, as well as a lot of other fun behind the scene things. I'm very close to my goal. Once I hit $100 USD a month, I am going to drop some merch in a store, an online store that everyone's going to have access to. My patrons are going to have first dibs, and everyone who is above the $10 tier, $10 or above, of course, they're going to get a discount code for said store. And I may or may not do something special as well for those $10 patrons. Who's to say? Who's to say? But consider joining the Patreon if you enjoy the show and you want to support, and also in an indirect way help support fantastic musicians as well, because I really truly believe in providing any kind of a platform that I can for badass musicians like Sierra, like everyone I've had on the show over the last 7 years. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I hope to continue to be a platform for these artists and these creative types, and also all while still having fun, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. I want to have fun. I want to provide a positive space for people to get away from everyday life for a minute and hear about a badass musician's journey or other fun things like that. And with that, I'm going to sign off here today. Thank you so very much for listening, especially if you're still listening. You're seriously awesome. I appreciate you. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll catch you next time right here on The Hotter Show. Take it easy, guys.